G'day, everybody. Great to have you listening again to Markham's Invisible Strength podcast series, Next Level. And today we're privileged to be joined by Mike Rutherford of Conspectus. Mike's an asset maintenance professional with over 30 years' experience in a wide array of industry segments. He's worked on projects in both the United Kingdom and Australia, and holds a place on the board of ACRA, the Australasian Concrete Repair and Remedial Building Association. Mike, welcome aboard, and could you give us some information on your own background and experience?
Thank you. The introduction. I guess my background, I've been very, very lucky in the fact that I've done time in manufacturing and product development. I've done time in contracting with a tier one contractor and also the consultancy aspect. So I've seen the industry from three different sides. So the experience, it's not a job, it's been a career. It's been a long time and a lot of lessons learned on the way. And I guess now it's a matter of passing those lessons on to the likes of facility owners and operators, and even the likes of residential. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey and a lot of changes in those, let's say, 30 plus years.
Yeah, fair enough. No, that's good. Can you tell us a little bit about your work in condition assessment and follow through? I think you're mentioning your work on heritage structures and such. Is that your
Yeah,
focus?
we do a lot of diversified consultancy work. I think probably the biggest segment that we're involved with is in infrastructure, where we're engaged to go out and do a condition assessment on steel and concrete, a corrosion audit, concrete coatings, steel coatings. We then put that into a condition assessment corrosion audit report, make recommendations. When those recommendations are accepted, we turn around and develop a project-specific specification that can be used for tendering, puts everybody on the same page. Over the past years, a lot of work's gone to design and construct, but from our perspective, we now see it going back to the likes of project-specific specifications. And with that, there's a lot of facility owners, operators, that in the tender document, we don't mention brand names or products, we mention product types, which sort of leaves it open for manufacturers to put up suitable systems for the tender. We then get involved in the tender meeting to cover technical aspects. And then once the project started, we're engaged to do the project quality services. Like we do a commissioning ITP for the client, covering all points to the specification and all sorts of requirements. On the heritage side, I'll just rewind back to the infrastructure side. I think there's a realisation now that our infrastructure is under more demand than what it was initially designed for, and maybe asset maintenance may have been a little bit on the downside. So there's a lot of work to be done, because we can't just turn around and replace water treatment or sewage treatment plants. But the remediation is a big part of that. The other part of market segment that we're heavily involved in is, like in my background there, heritage bridges. We've got bridges that are around Brisbane that are over 90 years of age. They've got to be protected. Most of them have protective coatings systems on them now, predominantly, which is the first stage being a siloxane impregnation system, and then an anti-carbonation system over the top. That bridge in the background is a Story Bridge. We were originally involved in that back in the manufacturing and product development days. That was about 30 years ago. It's now at the stage where it is now going to get a recoat. We can't do coating removal to do a recoat, because we lose the heritage fabric if we take any of the surface of the concrete off. So once again, that throws up a lot of challenges. So yeah, but it's all very interesting work, and with the bridges over the Brisbane River, We want them all looking nice for the Olympics. So we've got our work cut out for the next decade.
Very good. Yes, it does. Definitely sounds like very interesting work. Yeah, the detail involved, as you say, not damaging the heritage fabric. Dig in, if you would, please, to that term you used about project-specific specifications. It says it's like you might say obvious, and yet there's more to it than meets the eye. Can you tell us about them and why they're important?
With larger projects, with water projects, we're underwater services under WASA guidance as to what systems to use. But in other projects, we've had a couple like the bridge works, perfect example, and we had another one with dam radial gates, where we put out an expression of interest to manufacturers to say, well, okay, this is what we've got, this is what we want to do. Please make your recommendations. We've done that in water and sewerage with cementitious and epoxy or cross-linking type chemistry products. We go to the manufacturer, they come back to us with their recommendations. We overview the recommendations that they come up with. They're fully aware of the application and what the exposure is, the environment. It's like the old saying, what works in the laboratory in Sydney doesn't necessarily work in Cairns in a tropical marine environment. From there, we'll go to do product trials. Each manufacturer will come in, not on the same day, of course, and they'll do a trial area. We'll do, like concrete, we'll do the surface preparation, ready to go. Manufacturers come in, they do their trial. Then we do the likes of adhesion tests, gloss, and depends what the client wants. So it's all fair in that aspect. But then again, with the likes of a lot of water authorities, we're restricted to WASA, where there's no brand or product names. It's a WASA category, like say 820 for epoxy Novolac or whatever. So manufacturers of epoxy Novolacs can put into that. Now, with a project-specific specification, one of the things we do ask for, and I think it's been sadly overlooked over the last decade, is performance warranties. We go to the manufacturers and say, okay, give us a draft warranty. You know what the application is. This is a product that you've recommended. So we need that supported with a draft warranty for whatever the client's chasing. That can be, anything up to 10 years to first maintenance, 15 years to first maintenance. And then on the other side of the coin, we go to the contractor. He puts a warranty on his workmanship, so the client gets a joint manufacturer-contractor warranty. We do put a clause in there that the contractor has to be accredited and trained, and the operatives have to be trained by the manufacturer of that product. And the contractors got to have a minimum of 5 years experience in similar applications. So that becomes project specific, because no two projects are the same. We can't just do one generic spec and say that's one size is going to fit all. And like we've had instances where we've asked contractors for the specification, manufacturer specification, and we've been handed a product TDS. Well, a TDS isn't a specification. It just gives you an outline. And if you read the disclaimer at the bottom, it doesn't really carry much weight.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Absolutely get it. It's something that's important to us too, about performance warranties, as opposed to just saying, here's another bucket of the same product.
Exactly. It's an insurance policy for the client.
Yes, that's good. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And
it works well. And it's a commitment for the manufacturer. They're fully aware of what the application is, where the product's going, and what it has to do. And as I said, with that project-specific specification, that does help. If it's supported by the manufacturer with a warranty.
Yes, very good. And I guess a fairly key point which we're going to talk about is, can you comment on industry loss of memory recall? I think it was an expression used when we were planning for this little chat. you're getting past lessons.
Yeah, look, I think if you have a look at the failures that we have in concrete remediation and concrete protection, especially, you know, in my opinion, they're all preventable. But we have applications where we have specifications for doing a repair with a polymer modified cementitious product, and then the next day we put an epoxy coating over the top, and then we get a failure, just like we did the year before, and we have for the last decade. That once again goes back to the likes of the project specification, manufacturer supported project specification, where, you know, we aim to wherever we can to use a single source of supply. So in other words, we don't have one manufacturer's product being overcoated or used right next to another manufacturer's product. But this has been done in the past, and warranties have been offered, but they're pretty hollow warranties. What we term as a 5x5 warranty, 5 minutes or 5 kilometres. That's what it boils down to, if you know what I mean. And not being a little bit sarcastic on that one, but, you know, have we learned from the lessons of the past? I think we have in a lot of instances. Like you look at failures. Let's say, for argument's sake, we go into water treatment and we reline sedimentation basins or filters. It's not all that easy just to take it offline to rectify or remediate something that could have been prevented. So it's far better philosophy to get it right the first time. So we go back at the front end and make sure it's all okay. And we have the ITPs, like I mentioned, the commissioning ITPs. It covers all aspects of the project from commencement or pre-start meeting right through to completion. And like even to that degree, if it's in water, first thing on the ITP is certification of potable water approval, AS4020. That's the first thing on the ITP. You know, that's quite often overlooked. We have had projects where they've been used in water and that hasn't been thoroughly checked out. And in the end, at the end of the day, all had to be removed and redone, which means everything's got to come offline. There's cost involved with that. Got to be cleaned. What's been put on's got to be removed. That can be very, very expensive. And like in removing that, we end up going back to parent concrete, and parent concrete, the profile on that is generally pretty rough because, like, you know, like CSP8, maybe CSP10, if we use hydrodemolition to take off a failed coating or an incompatible coating. As I said, all preventable. And like we keep on saying, prevention is better than cure. So make sure you get it right at the front end. The importance of that is it can't be stressed highly enough, in my opinion.
That's good. That's good. I agree with you. It's very important. We've got a few minutes up our sleeve. Can I throw you a curveball that wasn't in the original questions? I'm just going to ask if there's any, could you tell us, is there any memorable projects that stick in your mind and in your past experience, which you particularly enjoyed working with, or maybe particularly didn't enjoy working with?
Look, there's probably a few, and I smirk when I say that because I've had projects where I've been engaged for 4 days and come out 204 days later. We've had projects let for concrete remediation and protective coating. Let's say the contractor's qualifications weren't quite there, so we went in to basically do a superintendent's role to get that right. And once again, I get back to what works in the laboratory doesn't necessarily work on site. Spray application of a epoxy liner, which looked good. It was going on probably about 250, 300 microns. Looked great on the wall. You go back 5 minutes later, and we had not just sagging, but almost curtaining. You know, you could actually put your phone in a curtain. It was that much. So, and then there's the enjoyable ones where you do the condition assessment at the start, and you go right through to the completion of the project. Some of those projects can go on for quite some time, but it's really gratifying to get the end and to look at what you started with and what you ended with, and you know what work went into that. But yeah, look, there's quite a few memorable ones there. You know, like I can even go back to the late 90s. We had a smelter expansion where, I don't know, there's probably about 350 odd thousand litres of epoxy went into that, to save wastage rather than mix and form and pour on site. We prefabricated epoxy pads. This was for isolation of electrics. You know, it's concrete related, but we prefabricated everything on site, and the wastage factors were down around 1%. Previous job in Bahrain, I think, was about 180% wastage factor. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff in there, and just to pick out a couple, it makes it hard.
Yeah, that's good. Sounds
That's
like
where we learned the lessons to make sure we don't go down that track again.
interesting mix of experiences.
Yeah, very much so. And I must say that, you know, I spent 3 years based in the UK and covered Europe and, you know, Ireland, and a little bit of work in Dubai. And, you know, we do take a lot for granted in Australia. Like we don't get freeze thaw in concrete. I worked on the Channel Tunnel rail link. Like, you know, that was interesting. The dry docks in Dubai. But, you know, I get back to what I was saying before about what works in the lab. You know, we have a situation in Queensland where a tropical marine environment, you know, we wouldn't use the same product as we'd use in Tasmania that, you know, takes 48 hours to cure at 15 degrees when we have the likes of the high relative humidity and the high temperature. And I guess